I want you to know something. That the bigger your dream is, I want you to understand the harder the grind.
Now that's real. Bigger your
Listen to
dream,
me.
the harder the
Luck
grind.
is for leprechauns, and you ain't green. Luck is for leprechauns, and you're not green. I'm gonna say it again. Luck is for leprechauns, and you're not green. What I am telling you is that if you're willing to go beast mode, you can have whatever you want. I'm a living example.
Alright, how y'all doing out there? It's Mr. Hamilton. I'm a grinder. Today we're going to have a quick video for 7th grade. We're going to be touching on standard 7.2.4 and a little bit of 7.1.1. I'm going to try to keep this under 3 minutes. Let me set my timer. I want it to be short and sweet. And I want you guys to download this video, convert it to MP3, so you can see all the information that we need to know for our upcoming unit tests and quizzes. Alright, so the first thing we'll start off is talking about Washington's farewell. We'll go back to George Washington, first president. Let's see what he brought to the table. Here we go. Let me enlarge. Alright, cool. So precedent is the main thing that we get from George Washington, because he was the first to do everything as a president. So he set the example for other presidents to follow. Anything that he did was a precedent, first to do something. All right, he set many precedents as a new president. All right, let's see what else we got. Domestic and foreign, we have to know the difference between the two. Domestic is an issue or something dealing within the country. Foreign is something outside of the country that they have to address. All right. Here we go. We're going to skip ahead. Washington's precedents in domestic affairs. He created a cabinet. The cabinet was a group of advisors that the president uses, and they still have the cabinet to this day. Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Education. All those positions are considered cabinet members. They're some of the most powerful people in the country. All right. Let me go for us ahead. Also, his Secretary of Treasury at the time, Washington Alexander Hamilton. No, he's not my cousin or uncle or great, but he devised a plan to create a national bank. This is a federalist push movement, because federalism believes in big, strong national government. He wanted the national bank where the federal government takes on state debt if the state runs into problems, federal taxes, and the capital was moved to Washington, D.C. as a compromise between northern and southern states. All right, so that this plan could be pushed forward. All right, Whiskey Rebellion was also a major turning point and a precedent set by Washington, because he actually led the army that put down the rebellion. These were a group of farmers in Pennsylvania that felt that an unfair tax had been passed to impose a tax on grain, which was used to make whiskey products, and the grain was a part of their farming business. So they felt like it was unfair for them to pay a tax that was used to help get rid of the debts for other states when they paid theirs. But all in all, Washington went in with his army, and he put that rebellion down, and he set a precedent. Farewell address. This is the most important component from Washington. He told us about permanent alliances. He said he warned to stay out of permanent alliances with other countries, because if you're in an alliance with someone and they get into a conflict with another nation, then you will have to step in and fight alongside them. We want to stay out of conflicts. We've been in enough up to this point. Proclamation of neutrality. So this is what that deals with. He wants to stay neutral. When you stay neutral, you're not in the conflict. Checking my time. You're not involved in it. So we're going to move forward. Neutral. Not involved in any conflicts with any other nations. We don't want to form any treaties, anything. Picnics Treaty was a domestic treaty. It was set within, well, not domestic, it was within the country, but it was aligned with another nation. Not I guess you could say, military treaty. It was a treaty identifying the northern boundary of Florida, which was a Spanish colony in 1795. All right. Now, one last thing that he really pushed for the nation not to do, he warned them not to form political parties. He felt like political parties would divide the government, and he was unsuccessful in doing that. He hated political parties, but to this day we know that political parties, they eventually rose to power, and now we have that division in government as Washington predicted. All right, we're going to stop there. Now we're going to move forward and talk a little bit about John Adams, the second president of the United States. Let me pull his slide up. Here we go. Oh, Johnny boy. All right. XYZ affair is probably the most important aspect of John Adams' presidency. He was the second president. He was a well-respected man, but he had some issues they had to deal with as soon as he received the presidency. The XYZ affair is known as this is because it was a conflict between France and the United States. France felt that the United States should back them because they backed us in the American Revolution, and they felt when they got in a conflict with Great Britain that we should have stepped in and fought along their side. But once again, Washington signed a neutrality proclamation agreement that he didn't want to be involved in any conflicts, all right, with other nations. So at this time, France started impressing American ships, all right. So they started impressing American ships and started seeing that taking our ships and our goods and everything, anything that, especially goods that we sent to Britain. So he sent some diplomats to negotiate a treaty with them. So he sent them over there, Charles Pinckney, John Marshall, and Elbridge Gerry, and they met with 3 French representatives. Their names were never really revealed, so they called them XYZ. And they went there to speak with the king, but he sent these 3 agents, XYZ, and that's how they got their name, because they never really found out their exact name. And when they talked to them, they were actually bribed. I mean, the demands were just outrageous. So this is what they offered. They said, okay, if you want us to stop attacking American ships, then this is what you need to do. They wanted them to, let me highlight it for you real quick. They wanted them to pay $10 million as a loan, so they would pay it back, and then they also wanted $250,000 of a personal bribe. So this is money that they wouldn't pay back, all right, to the French Foreign Minister, Charles Maurice Talleyrand, all right. And they wanted a formal apology, all right, for comments made by John Adams, all right. So they looked at this as like, serious? We're not about to pay this, so it's over with. So they came back, and for about a year, you have something so-called, it's not a fully declared war, but it was technically a little war called the Quasi-War, all right? And it was only fought on the seas, in the Atlantic Ocean area and Caribbean, but this worsened relationship between France and the United States. So John Adams reacted by sinking French ships. This led to, get my little pen together. This led to the Quasi-War. They went back and forth sinking ships. The French kept asking for bribes, and we would keep paying them. Eventually, we would go bankrupt if that would happen. So that's an inferring question, a response right here. So think about it. If we would have paid the bribe, we would have kept to keep paying. That's a precedent we did not want to set. All right. So he would find another way eventually. All right. So later they were identified: Conrad Hottinger, Pierre Bellamy, and Lucien Hateval. These are the French agents, but at the time they were known as XYZ because they didn't know their names. All right, so that's pretty much it. He had to deal with that situation. Eventually it ended in a stalemate, and that's it. The XYZ affair was a meeting of the French leaders with the U.S., and where they decided. Well, they didn't decide. They didn't come to a complete agreement, and they had a quasi-war for about a year until it ended in a stalemate. All right, which means no actual victor. All right, last up, I know I'm over my time, but last up, I want to talk to you about Thomas Jefferson, where we are right now. All right, Thomas Jefferson. All right, all you need to know about him is that. At this point, Thomas Jefferson is elected 1800. He's pitted against John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson is actually the first anti-federalist elected to the presidency. When I say anti-federalist, it's a person that's more for the states having more power, more individual rights for citizens. So he was a people's person, I guess you could say, for the common man. All right, so he won. It was a tight race. But let's get to his overall ideals. Right here, you can see Jefferson decentralized the government. These are practices of a anti-federalist, one that doesn't believe in big government. He wanted a smaller government, federal government, cut costs, reduce bureaucracy, and eliminate taxes. All right, a lot of things that people still to this day are wanting. All right, let's move forward. And most of all, at this point, we're gonna finish off here. He established, or during his presidency, something was established that gave a great amount of power to the judicial branch in the Supreme Court. which helped further balance the three branches of government, and that is circular, the power of judicial review. All right, now this is the ability for the Supreme Court to declare a law unconstitutional. Before this, they didn't have that power. It wasn't expressly stated in the Constitution. Now, the Supreme Court, the case that decided this should be given to the Supreme Court is known as Marbury versus Madison. All right. Marbury was a leader in the government under John Adams. John Adams gave him a commission to be appointed to the Supreme Court, but he didn't enact it fully before he got out of office. John Adams actually was trying to, as they say right here, before leaving office, John Adams he tried to pack the federal courts so he could, still have a lot of his, I guess you could say, ideals and agendas passed, because his people would be in power. So he tried to put a lot of people and judges in power before he got out of office, and one of them was Marbury. But Marbury's commission was not fully signed and sent off. So when Thomas Jefferson came in, he didn't bother to deal with it, all right, because they were not his people anyway. He didn't agree with a lot of those ideals of those people under John Adams. So Marbury sued the government, saying that he was commissioned to be appointed to the Supreme Court, and John Marshall presided over that case, and he came to the decision that the Supreme Court has the final say in those issues to whether this is constitutional or not, and they decided that that this was unconstitutional. All right, so he wasn't appointed, but they did establish judicial review with that case by saying that the Supreme Court decides if something is constitutional or unconstitutional, gives them the power to decide on all things associated with the Constitution, including laws. All right, so that'll be it for today. We went over Washington's farewell address. The key thing you need to remember about that is that he warned the country against about political parties. He warned the country about getting into treaties and alliances with other nations. He wanted to stay neutral. John Adams, XYZ affair. It was a conflict between the U.S. and France, where it actually led to a small war, I guess you could say, on a naval war on the high seas between France and the U.S. For about a year. It was caused because the French started impressing American ships, taking the sailors and the goods that were en route to Britain, and they did that because they felt America should have backed them as they did for us in the American Revolution. Now, the French were fighting the British at this time, so that's what we need to know about that XYZ affair, and it further deteriorated the relationship between us and France. Lastly, Thomas Jefferson, he, under his presidency, established judicial review. And it wasn't necessarily anything he necessarily did himself. It was just actually a case that, in a case where Marbury wanted to be a Supreme Court justice, and Thomas Jefferson didn't want to sign, or I guess you could say push through for it, because it was signed by John Adams. But as he got out, Thomas Jefferson came in and he didn't approve of it. So judicial review was established, giving the Supreme Court more power, or the power to identify a law as being unconstitutional or not. No, I went over my time. Sorry about that, long-winded. But I want you to download this video, convert it to an MP3, review, and you can listen to this all the time. And you can listen to it like music. I mean, it's kind of like music. It sounds like music anyway. And it'll become embedded in your brains, you guys. So this is me. I'm signing out. Big fella. As the world turns. Yeah, I thought I had stopped it. So let's do that again. As the world turns.